So let's discuss the different philosophy classes that we offer here at Kingsborough, as some of them at least. First of all, Philosophy 70, the classes begin in the numbers at Philosophy 70 and go up to Philosophy 79, I believe, yes. And Philosophy 70 is called Problems in Philosophy, and the subtitle is God, Humanity, and Nature. This is a kind of introductory philosophy course where those three issues are sort of introductory sample philosophy problems. Of course, God is, I suppose, one of the most popular philosophical issues, whether or not God exists, what kind of being God is. There are a variety of philosophical arguments for and against the existence of God. Almost everybody has beliefs on this subject, so it's a kind of useful and interesting way to introduce anybody to philosophy. It's a central question. Is there more to life than just what we see? The other parts of the course, humanity and nature. What is man? What kind of beings are we? Are we just sort of biological robots subject to laws of cause and effect? Is the universe just one big chemical and physical machine? Those are the kinds of questions. Do we have free will? Those are the kinds of questions that come up in the second and third parts of the Philosophy 70 course. Philosophy 71 is a history of philosophy class, focusing on the classical era philosophers. That's philosophers from the ancient world. In many colleges that teach the classical philosophy era, the focus is entirely on Greek and Roman philosophers, Western philosophy. But it's to Kingsborough's credit that the classical philosophy course here has been taught for many years, at least since I've been here, is a kind of multicultural course focusing not only on Western but also on Asian philosophy, Chinese and Indian philosophy, for example, Buddhism, Hinduism, Taoism, and so on. So that's a fascinating course, sort of the origins of philosophy in the world. The next course, Philosophy 72, is the modern era of philosophy. Begins from the Renaissance period up to the 20th century, roughly. And, it's sort of like philosophical history stage 2. So these two classes, ancient and modern, they're focused historically on periods, and so they're focused on what was going on in society at the time, and on the names, the individuals that are big in philosophical history. In the ancient world, for instance, Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle are sort of three central names. And in the modern era, you have philosophers like René Descartes, considered the father of modern Western philosophy, like Socrates is considered the father of ancient Western philosophy. Along with Descartes, you've got big names like John Locke and Bishop Berkeley and David Hume and Nietzsche, John Stuart Mill, Immanuel Kant, and so on. Depending on the teacher of the course and that teacher's preferences for this or that particular philosopher or issue, you may get slightly different subject matter in the course. So it's always maybe perhaps useful to try to find out who's teaching it and see what the syllabus is, if it matters to you. Philosophy 73 is a logic class, and in that class you can learn both formal logic, which is almost mathematical, If proposition P is true, then proposition Q must be true. P is true, therefore Q is true, that sort of thing. If P then Q, P, therefore Q, where P and Q can stand for any two propositions. This is a sample of kind of formal logic, and then there's also informal logic that's discussed and learned in that class, kind of fallacies of conversational reasoning or ambiguity, assumption, and so on. I love that course. When I was a student, I took a version of it at Brooklyn College, and I think I learned almost the most of what mattered to me in terms of philosophical skills just by engaging in that course in a deep way. Philosophy 74 is an ethics class. In ethics, the focus is, of course, on evaluations of human action, right and wrong, good and evil, moral and immoral, holy and unholy. What makes those things right or wrong, if they are in fact? Is ethics objective, like the shape of the earth seems to be objective, relatively spherical? This is factual. If something is factual, you can say it's objective. Or is it subjective, like preference for a certain fashion, or a like or dislike of broccoli might be described as subjective? Is ethics subjective, objective, or some blend of the two? And what are the arguments for or against these views about ethics? You might want to call them meta views, a higher level conceptual account of the nature of ethics is a kind of meta ethical view. But then there are also ethical cases and problems that you might, depending on the focus of the teacher, some teachers focus entirely on theory, others on practice. So ethical cases might be the entire subject matter of a course in ethics. For instance, the ethics of abortion or capital punishment, or issues in sexuality, gender, drug use, whether or not marijuana ought to be legalized, capital punishment, euthanasia, all sorts of things like that. There are other courses. There's a medical ethics course. I forget the numbers of some of these, so I don't teach them all. There's a philosophy of religion class. We already talked about God a little bit in the philosophy 70, but there's a whole course, philosophy of religion, which is much more comprehensive than just the issue of whether or not God exists. There's also an Asian philosophy course, and we mentioned some things about Asian philosophy come up in the classical philosophy class, but of course this is an entire course devoted to Asian philosophy. Buddhism and Hinduism, I think, are very, very prominent in that course. And once again, I don't know the numbers of those because I don't teach them, but I do teach philosophy 79 as well as philosophy 70, and I have taught 71 and 72 and 73. I do teach 74. 70 is problems in philosophy, God, humanity, nature. 71 is classical. 72 is modern. 73 is logic. 74 is ethics. And the last one, 79, which I didn't discuss yet, is global ethics. So it's just like Asian philosophy focuses narrowly, I suppose, rather than just all of philosophy, on Asian philosophy, and global ethics focuses on those ethical issues that have global dimensions, like pollution is global, global warming, whether or not there should be global government, terrorism, issues like that. The global ethics class here is also linked, interestingly, with a fascinating seminar on global citizenship that goes on in Salzburg, Austria, and students apply for this Salzburg seminar scholarship. Those who are accepted take the class, Philosophy 79 Global Ethics, which prepares them for a week in Salzburg, Austria. All expenses paid. It's a wonderful scholarship and a great experience. If you're interested in learning about that, I would encourage you to go to Kingsborough's webpage for the honors program and click on off-campus study programs and learn something about that. It's a fascinating experience. I would highly recommend it to any student. And I think as of now, those are all the philosophy courses that we offer. I don't think I missed one. I feel I wish I could have given you the numbers for the philosophy of religion, medical ethics, and Asian philosophy class. These are like 76, 77, and 78. But I just forget which of those three numbers goes with which of those three names. But you can easily find that in the online catalog. Okay. I hope that this was informative. Um, the descriptions that I gave you just now were just sort of superficial on one level, but perhaps maybe I hope a little bit more helpful than just sort of looking through the catalog. Of course, there are descriptions in the catalog that are equally useful, maybe even a little more informative, a little more specific. But this is sort of Professor Repetti's video version of what you might find in the catalog. All right. My last bit of advice is to study the catalog. That, for me, when I was a student, was sort of like my Bible. You want to understand programs like liberal arts or philosophy and how they relate to each other. Study the catalog. Study the main page for each discipline. Read up on what liberal arts is in the catalog. That sort of thing. That was an invaluable guide to my undergraduate experience. Okay, good luck.